This brief passage from the Gospel of John has a lot of insights and a lot of themes that we hear in the early Jewish scriptures, especially themes from the Exodus, from the people of Israel being freed from the slavery of Egypt and their journey into the Promised Land. It's immersed in so much Paschal atmosphere. Jesus crossed the sea and climbed the mountain, evoking these powerful symbols that remind us of the journey of the people of Israel. It also speaks about having a lot of grass, which reminds us of Psalm 23, of the Promised Land, as the place where God dwells, leads us, as the place where we are to live freely and roam freely and be with God freely. Is the verdant pastures that we speak about a lot in scriptures. It's the place where we can be free with God. This Passover that Jesus speaks about prefigures another, that of the Son of God. And listen to the words that Jesus says to Philip. The first thing that came to my mind when I read it was when Jesus said, Jesus raised his eyes and saw that a large crowd was coming to him and said to Philip, "Where can we buy enough food for them to eat?" When was the last time in any gospel you heard Jesus of buying anything? The man even said he doesn't have a purse. He doesn't carry any money. He doesn't have a place to live. When was the last time Jesus said, "Let's go to the store"? Never. Never. As a matter of fact, the gospel writer says he said this to him to test him. He said this to test him, to see what was in his heart, to see what did he really comprehend about who Jesus is up to this point. He wants Philip to show him his heart. Let me see what you get about me. Where shall we buy bread for these people to eat? This question that Jesus poses to Philip is not about food. It's a test to reveal Philip's heart and his mindset. But the Gospel of John does ask this question, where? And it's a profound question. It's an important question. It's a question that the evangelist John repeats many times. Where? For example, Nathanael asked Jesus, "Where do you know me from?" At the wedding of Cana, the crowd says, "Where did this wine come from?" The encounter with Nicodemus says, or he hears, "The wind blows where it wills, but you do not know where it comes from or where it goes." The Samaritan woman at the well asked Jesus, "Where do you get that living water?" And at the end of Jesus' life, it's Pilate who asked Jesus, "Where are you from?" So this where points to something important. It points to Jesus' divine origin, to where does Jesus get who he is? Where does he get? Where do we find the source of his identity and his power and who he is for us? And that where is a place that Jesus invites all of us to. He invites us to go to that place, to that where his divine nature, power, identity, power comes from. And he allows us to see that where, that place, through our baptism, in our baptism. Last week, I spoke to you about what that meant of those who are reborn in baptism are those who are called saints, and they are called saints because of two simple things. I said they reject evil and they choose good. When we reject evil, and that means anything that hurts anyone, and when we choose goodness, and that's goodness for everyone, then we get to see that where. Because that means that we get to act out from that where, that place where God dwells. Christ's awareness of his origin and his mission is clear. It's in his relationship with the Father. When Jesus asked Philip, "Where shall we go buy bread?" he's contrasting two things: God's providence and human logic. Philip's response is a human logic. He begins to calculate and trying to do the math about how much it's going to cost to buy food for all the people who are there. That's our human reasoning. Jesus wants to move us from our human calculation to trusting again in God's providence. The human term, the verb to buy, suggests a transaction, a marketplace, a logic of exchange that is born from our necessity. We know what it's like to go to the store. We know what it's like to need something and to go get something. And even no matter how hungry we may be, if we want to alleviate our hunger, we need to have something, don't we? We need to have something. If you don't have a little bit of something, all you're going to have is hunger. Because everything is an exchange with human logic. In order for me to acquire what I need to satiate and alleviate my hunger, I need to give something. I just don't get it for free. I don't get it. I need to give something in order to have something. And what I have to give measures how much I'm going to get and how long that's going to last and when do I need to do this again and again and again. It's a non-ending transactional thing that I have to do. Instead, Jesus points us to something deeper. Instead of being trapped in that cycle of survival and calculation, Jesus represents to us an alternative. And that alternative is, can you trust God? Can you recognize God with you? Philip, his practical response highlights our tendency to rely on what we can see and what we can measure. As a matter of fact, he's very clear. He says, first of all, that 200 days worth of wages would not be enough for people. And then Andrew, with the other disciple who's there, he says, well, here's a little boy who has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. But what good are these for so many? He recognizes that, first of all, that there's one little boy there, and that one little boy has 5 barley loaves and 2 fish, and he's doing the math. Who is he missing? Who is he missing that's there that should be obvious? Jesus. He recognizes the little boy, and he knows that's not enough. He recognizes that that little boy has 5 barley loaves, and that's not enough. He has 2 fish, and that's not enough. And he's totally missing out on the one who makes everything enough. Jesus. He's enough. And he's enough with everything. He's enough for the 5 barley loaves, and he's enough for the 2 fish, and he's enough for that little boy. For everything that seems inadequate and just not enough in our life, Jesus makes it enough. And not only does he make it enough, he uses it in a way that is unimaginable. The scripture is clear here if we pay attention to the little details. But what good are these? You ever said that to yourself? But what good am I? But what good am I at this? But what good does this do for me? We ask ourselves that doubting question so many times. What does Jesus do with what for us is apparently not good enough? Jesus said, have the people recline. And this is very Eucharistic, huh? This is very Eucharistic. The loaves and the fish. Jesus says, have the people recline. And that's an important detail because at the time of Jesus, this Greco-Roman time period, most people would eat reclined at table, reclined on the floor to eat. Hence, why washing of the feet was a hospitality thing, but it was also a good thing to do because when you were lying down to eat, next to you wasn't an elbow, it was somebody's feet. Right? So you're laying down and you got somebody's feet on this side, somebody's feet on that side, right? You're laying down. What does this mean that you recline to eat? What does this mean that Jesus says, have the people recline? Remember, these were poor people. Among them, they only had 5 barley loaves and 2 fish. So they were poor people. And the first thing that the Eucharist does is that it makes you feel important. It makes you feel like somebody. And not just somebody, Jesus asks you to recline. Think about how we distribute food to those who are poor. We even call it a food line. And they got to get in line to get food. Not Jesus. He says, have them recline. Who were the people who reclined to eat at his time? Important people who had servants. Because you recline on the floor and then you think about, oh, I need the salt. Oh, let me try and get up. Try to get back up. Try to get back down and say, damn it, darn it, I forgot the pepper. And try to get up. You wouldn't do that because you had a servant. You'd be like, excuse me. Right? So Jesus, first thing that the Eucharist does is that it makes people important, gives them back their dignity. Everybody is equal and everybody gets served. And everybody gets served by who? So the men reclined, about 5,000 in number. And this 5,000 in number is also important because we hear in the book of Acts that that is about the number of the Christian community. So all the Christian community is there. And they reclined. Then Jesus took the loaves and gave thanks, very Eucharistic, and distributed them to those who were reclining. See, Jesus is the first one to come and serve. Jesus is the first one that comes and serves us because as he says, the Son of Man has come to serve and not to be served. He teaches us how to be children of God again. He teaches us how to experience the dignity of being a son, a daughter of God. And he gives to us more than enough. And unlike Moses and the manna in the desert, which was given to them only daily, and it was very limited to that day, Jesus takes the loaf, give thanks, and everybody had their fill, all that they wanted. You can't outdo God in generosity. And once they all had what they wanted, they had everything had their fill. He said to the disciples, gather the fragments. Gather the fragments so that nothing will be wasted. This is important stuff. Nothing will be less. So they collected them and filled 12 whisker baskets of fragments. And that number 12 is very significant to us again in Scripture. It's not only because of the 12 tribes of Israel, which is already says to us that everyone, at the meal of Jesus, everyone is welcome. And there is room and there is enough for everyone to have their fill. Not only the 5,000, but everyone, that 12 tribes that represents the people of Israel, everyone, every tribe, every nation, every people, every race, everyone is welcome. And it's not only the 12 tribes, but then you think about it, 12 months of the year, this is the cosmos, meaning all of creation has a right to be fed at the table of the Lord. And when the people saw the sign that Jesus had done, they said, this is truly the prophet, the one who is to come into the world. And since Jesus knew that they were going to come and carry him off to make him king, he ran away to the mountain. Because even though Jesus has just done this, they don't get it. They don't get him. They follow him and they want to make him king because they want him to keep feeding them like that. And he's offering something deeper. He's offering the bread of life. He's offering something that's going to last them forever. And the only place that Jesus accepts that he's king is not one that's political or powerful like this. He runs away to the mountain, meaning he wants nothing to do with it. The only place that Jesus is identified as a king is right behind me. This is the King of the Jews. That's the place where Jesus reigns. And even there on the cross, he gives to us. He gives to us the blood and water that flows from his side, and he gives us his spirit. Even there, he is nourishing us and feeding us with his spirit. I don't know how I end it, so there it is.